How can I randomly select one of several questions in LimeSurvey? For example, I would like to create 3 questions and then I would like only one of these 3 questions to be randomly selected for each and every respondent. I'll show that quickly with an example. I'll create a new survey, I'll just call it Test 3 and then I'll go to the structure here to create a question group first. I'll just call it F1, save and add question. Now the first step is to use a so-called equation question, and in this equation question this random selection of these 3 questions is then made. The first step here is to switch from the question type to the equation question. It can be found here under the mask questions. Confirm this once and then I have to enter a code. I'll just call the question an equation now. And now, where the question text usually goes, that's where I can now write this random selection. It works like this: you start such an expression script here with curly brackets and then you basically only have to say that you now want to have a random number drawn between 1 and 3. And that would work in principle by saying random and then 1, 3. This means that a random number should be drawn between 1 and 3, i.e. 1, 2 or 3. Now there is another peculiarity: if the respondents in the survey go back, then it would not work here, that a new random number is drawn again and again, or it would lead to problems. That's why you add a little something to this expression script that says, if the random number has already been drawn, then please leave it at that, and if it hasn't been drawn yet, then please draw a new random number, and you do it like this, by creating a if condition, and then you write down, in parentheses is underlined, empty in parentheses, equation. This means that this if condition is used to check whether this equation variable is empty, and if this is the case, then what happens is what you specify after the comma, namely these random draws of the numbers 1 to 3, and then you enter another comma here. There, with these if conditions, what is to be executed is written if the condition is not fulfilled in the front. That is, if this is not empty, then the already existing random number should simply be taken and it is then called an equation, because I have just named this question with the code equation. Of course, you can also use any other name. Well, now I've closed the bracket here again, forgotten at the very end, and then it should actually fit. I click on Save and Close here and then I can see directly if everything has worked. Yes, there is no error message here. If there is still an error in it, then it would be displayed here in red. Well, then I'm going back here to the structure. So far, I only have this equation question in this group of questions. I'm going to add another question here, and now come these 3 questions, from which I want to randomly select a question. I'll just call it F1 and just write question 1 in the question text here, and I'll leave the question type here. The only thing I still have to change here is the relevance equation. The relevance equation defaults to 1. This would mean that all respondents would be shown this question here. However, I would like to show this question only to a certain part of the respondents, namely only to those who have been assigned the random number 1 in this previous equation question. That's why I'm writing into the relevance equation here. Equation, because this is the code for the preceding equation question, is equal to 1. Here you always have to think of the double equal sign. This means that this question is only displayed here to those who have been assigned the random number 1. Save and new. And then we do the whole thing again for question 2. And here, too, I go back to the relevance equation and then write equation 2 here again. Save and new, and the whole thing again for the 3rd question. This is what the whole thing looks like now. So I have an equation question and these 3 questions. I change one small thing in the equation question. To do this, I click on the question here and then I click on Edit, and then we can set here in the options that this question should always be hidden. So the actual random number that is drawn does not have to be displayed to the respondents, but only the corresponding question, which is then selected. And I achieve this by hiding this equation question here. So, that's basically it. Now we can take a look at it directly in the survey preview. A random number is now always drawn and the corresponding question is displayed to the respondents. The first time here now, for example, it is question 2. If I do the whole thing again, preview the survey here again, then it's now question 1 and so on. So every time I restart this here in the preview or when a person starts the questionnaire who got the link, one of these 3 questions is randomly selected. So far as a small insight into how to randomly select a question from several questions in LimeSurvey. Good luck with the application.